Everything Action presents Invasion USA by Jason Frost. Chapter 3. Matt Hunter piloted the airboat across the marshy sawgrass, squinting against the sun for some sign of John Eagle. The old Seminole was always doing this to him, giving him these mysterious Indian directions, half in the Seminole Muskegean language, and then expecting Hunter to show up on time. A little game they played. Hunter eased the airboat up to the small island, what the locals called a hammock, and cut the engine. He stepped onto the empty wooden cage and looked around. Cupping his hands around his mouth, he called, "John? John Eagle?" No answer, of course. John Eagle was not his friend's real name. The truth had come out during a particularly intense drinking bout one evening last summer at John Eagle's home. They had both pretended to be drunker than they were. Somehow it made talking easier. John had been enraged. His mother was a full-blooded Seminole, he'd said, descended from a Creek Indian chief. But his father was only half Seminole. The other half was Irish. John Eagle's real name, he thundered angrily, was John Finnegan. John Eagle, he explained, is my spiritual name. Hunter stood atop the cage and smiled at the memory. It didn't matter to him. After all, Hunter wasn't his real name either. Nor was Matt. But the reasons for this change were a little harder to explain, so he never did. Over to the left, the brush rustled by the cypress trees. Something was moving fast, coming toward him. "John, that you?" The tops of the brush wavered as something big trampled everything in its path. Hunter hefted an old surplus knapsack on his back and grabbed the neatly coiled rope on top of the cage. He hopped ashore, first testing to make sure the land was solid. In the Everglades, even the land could fool you. The rustling became louder. He could barely see the shape of a man running through the underbrush, almost to the clearing. "John Eagle?" "Who else?" John Eagle hollered as he burst into the clearing at a full gallop. He ran fast for a man in his 60s, but then he had to. A 10-foot alligator was running behind him, snapping at his heels. Hunter laughed. "What's so goddamn funny?" John panted, barely keeping up ahead of the fat reptile. "The bastard thinks I'm Captain Hook or something." "It's the hair," Hunter said, not moving to help. "They're attracted to gray hair." "You should live so long to get the hair this gray." John Eagle switched courses and ran straight for Hunter. The alligator followed. "Shit," Hunter said, dodging to the opposite direction. "Huh, not so goddamn funny now, white man?" John Eagle chuckled as he ran. The alligator stayed on the Seminole's tail, its claws front feet moving together so that it ran with a slight rabbit hop. John was comfortably ahead, but when he glanced over his shoulder to check the reptile's progress, his foot hit a soft spot of peat and muck, and his right leg sank up to his knees. He struggled to pull it free, twisting and yanking on it. No use. The alligator, low to the ground, like some sleek Italian sports car, zoomed toward him, its jaws already yawning open. It hissed as it closed in on him. "Luck of the Irish, eh, John?" Hunter said, tossing his lasso over the alligator's open snout. He jerked hard on the rope, and the huge mouth slammed shut. The fat reptile forgot about John Eagle and began thrashing about, trying to shake the rope free. "This Tonto crap is bullshit," John said, tugging at his leg. "From now on, I'll do the roping." "Fine. Give me decent directions and this wouldn't happen." Hunter reached into his knapsack and pulled out 2 cans of beer. He tossed one at John Eagle. "None of this. Turn right at the old Calusa's village stuff." John Eagle smiled, opened his beer. "Everyone knows what it is. The Calusa Indians disappeared in 1800. There is no village site." "Yeah, but everyone knows where it was." He stopped, pulling on his leg, and took a long swallow of beer. "You did just fine. You're here, aren't you?" "Barely." John gestured at his immobile leg. "You gonna give me a hand here?" "I'll think about it." Hunter walked over to the still thrashing alligator. Its black, horny plates glistened like shiny armor underneath the bright Florida sun. It grunted with each jerk of its neck. Frustrated, it lashed its heavy tail around at Hunter's feet. He hopped out of the way, just in time. "He's a tough one. Ought to be worth 4, maybe 500. John Eagle drained the last of his beer, crushing the can, and slipped it into his pocket. He pointed to Hunter's unopened can. "If you're not going to drink that..." "Jesus," Hunter said as the alligator's long jaws snapped apart the heavy rope. It lifted its head and let out a deep, loud roar, then charged straight for Hunter. Hunter jumped out of the way, and the alligator spotted John Eagle, still stuck in the peat. "One beer coming up," Hunter said, and threw the can to John. John Eagle shook the can vigorously as the alligator ran at him. When it was within a few feet, he popped near the top of the can at the reptile's head and popped the tab. Beer sprayed in the alligator's eyes and nose. It stopped, shook its snout, blinked rapidly, and charged again. "Geronimo!" Hunter yelled, shucking his knapsack and leaping on the alligator's back. "Geronimo?" John Eagle said, pulling on his leg. "Fuck Geronimo, you're down here in Seminole country, Buster. You yell Osceola." "Sorry," Hunter said, holding on tightly as the alligator whisked its muscular body back and forth. Hunter pressed his knees into the reptile's sides, locking his arms under his neck. The alligator's tail snaked around and whacked him in the thigh. He felt as if someone had just hit him with a baseball bat. Sorry ain't enough, Hunter. John's leg was almost free now. There are only 200 Seminoles left in the Everglades, but once, man, we owned this place. Osceola wiped out over 2,000 U.S. soldiers back in the Second Seminole War. We cost the government $60 million, and then they only captured Osceola during a parley under a goddamn flag of truce. Typical. The scaly tail whipped around and smacked Hunter's thigh again. His leg went numb and lost its grip. He started slipping to the side, his left leg wedging onto the belly of the alligator. A thick clawed foot the size of a softball dug into his calf. Pain jangled his brain, loosening his arm lock around the alligator's neck. Even then we weren't finished, John Eagle continued complaining, ignoring Hunter's grunts and groans. They had to pay us to leave Florida and go to the goddamn Oklahoma. Oklahoma, for Christ's sake. Hunter pulled himself up back on top of the alligator, hooking his right leg under its belly. He dug the heel of his cowboy boot into its ribs and, using his arm lock around its head for leverage, began pulling back on the big head. Finally, he flipped the alligator over onto its back. Its stubby legs paddled helplessly in the air. Hunter straddled its broad white chest and clamped both hands around its snout. He held the jaws shut, his knuckles wet against the pressure. John Eagle pulled his foot all the way out of the sludge and looked over at Hunter. I mean, what the hell's in Oklahoma? The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, Hunter said, struggling to keep the alligator's jaws shut. Think you'd give me a hand here? John limped over to Hunter's discarded knapsack, shaking the mud from his leg as he walked. He rooted through the pack, found the heavy-gauge steel wire, and walked over to Hunter. Quickly, expertly, he looped the wire around the alligator's jaws. Hunter stood up. His whole body was splattered with mud and slime. Blood streaked down his ankle where his pants were torn. He looked exhausted. John Eagle picked up the can of beer he'd squirted into the alligator's eyes and shook it. A little splashed around inside. He tossed it to Hunter. Look like you used this. Hunter finished what was left of the can, crushed it, and stuck it in his knapsack. He nodded toward the subdued alligator. This is the way your grandfather used to do it? John Eagle snorted. Closest my grandfather got to one of these was opening his alligator leather wallet to buy moonshine. Which grandfather, the Indian or the Irish? John shrugged. Both. Here he comes, Hunter said, pointing to the airboat zipping toward them. They were standing at Hunter's porch. How do you want to do this? John Eagle said. Straightforward. No, never work. We could do good guy, bad guy. You up to some snarling and foaming at the mouth? Too hot to foam. How about dumb and stubborn Cajun? You want to do that? Hunter shook his head. Too hard to do the accent. John Eagle frowned at Hunter. We can't insult the man. We gotta try something. It's expected. Hunter finished his beer and started for the kitchen. You want another? You're still too white for this part of the business, Hunter said. You don't understand the Indian mentality, the traditions. I understand enough. This is like busk. Busk? What's that? That's the ancient Seminole summer green corn harvest ceremony. The Seminoles, the Creeks, and the Uchis had the most intricate dance pattern of all the tribes. They formed in huge spirals, sometimes 4 spirals going on at the same time. What you're about to do, it's the same thing. John Eagle stared at Hunter with soft dark eyes. Busk, huh? Where'd you learn that about that? Hunter shrugged. Here and there. You're part Indian, aren't you? I mean, forget the blonde hair and pale skin. A Swede in the woodpile, maybe. Deep down, you got Indian blood, am I right? Hunter smiled. Another beer? John Eagle nodded. The airboat pulled up to the dock between Hunter's and John Eagle's boats. A huge Seminole with long black hair hanging down his back climbed out of it. He wore a tight orange t-shirt with black lettering across his broad chest. Little Hawk's live alligator wrestling, Dixie Highway, Miami. His painter's cap proclaimed Little Hawk's Cafe and Souvenir Shop, and the side of his airboat read Little Hawk's Everglades Tours. Clark Little Hawk walked across the dock to the 10-foot alligator in the wooden cage. He stooped down, examining the reptile from all sides, frowning and shaking his head a lot. Look at that son of a bitch act, John Eagle whispered to Hunter. They stood above the dock on Hunter's porch. The house itself was a modified chickee, the traditional Seminole house built on the stilted platform above the water. Hunter's house had the same log framework and thatched roof that John Eagle's Indian ancestors had had, but Hunter had added a couple of refinements, like walls and a porch. Hey, Clark Little Hawk, Hunter waved at the Indian climbing on the porch. You want a beer? Little Hawk painted his ample belly. Got any Perrier? Perrier, John Eagle groused. You're a Seminole, not a yuppie. I think I've got some from the last time you were here, Hunter said, and he went into the house. He grabbed 2 beers and a Perrier from the small refrigerator that the generator kept running. On the way through the living room, he popped the tape into the portable cassette player. By the time he gets back on the porch, the soundtrack from Oklahoma could be heard. Very funny, John Eagle said to him, taking the beer. You got Annie? Clark Little Hawk said. That one knocks me out. Sorry, Hunter said, handing him the Perrier. The small bottle disappeared in Clark Little Hawk's giant hand. Little Hawk was in his mid-30s, owner of half a dozen businesses in the area, renowned for fists as tight as they were large. Hunter stood between the 2 big Seminoles and quietly sipped his beer. Hunter was not an especially tall man, but people talking to him almost always got the impression that they were looking up at him. There was something in his stance, a looseness maybe, that exuded confidence. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but those he spoke to always heard every word. They made a point of it. However, this kind of talking was the specialty of John Eagle and Clark Littlehawk, more a form of entertainment than anything else. The alligator let out another loud roar. "Big mother, huh?" John Eagle said. Clark Littlehawk looked down at the crate as if he'd already forgotten about the alligator. "Him? Who else? Yeah, he's big enough, but he doesn't sound so good. What do you want him to do? Sing stormy weather? You know what I mean. Maybe he's sick. Sick my ass, Littlehawk. I just don't want no sick gator. They move too slow. Don't put on a good show for the tourists." "Slow? You want to see how slow he moves? Go down and open that cage. You'll have all the slow you can handle." Littlehawk shrugged. "How much?" 600. "Where's the other one?" "What other one?" John Eagle asked. "Hell, for 600 I figured there were 2 of them." Hunter chuckled. "I'll tell you what, John Eagle, I'll give you 300. 300? Business has been going to hell lately. Tourists don't want to watch a fat Indian wrestle an alligator. They want to go to Disney World to see Mickey Mouse. You've been telling me that for 6 years. 500. 450. Look at this." John Eagle tugged up Hunter's pant leg around the bandage wound. "That skelly bastard almost killed my partner." "Where were you?" John Eagle sighed. "Okay, 450, but you load him yourself." Littlehawk counted out the cash, squeezing each bill in his left hand. "Come on, Littlehawk," Hunter said. "I'll help you load up." "Thanks, Hunter." The three then lowered the crate onto Littlehawk's airboat and watched him roar away. John Eagle shook his head as Littlehawk disappeared amongst the tall grass. "If he wasn't my nephew, I'd held out for more." "If he wasn't your nephew, you'd have only paid 400. John Eagle gave Hunter his half of the money and climbed into his own airboat. "Why don't you come over tonight? Got some fresh ones." He reached down into his boat and held up a large jar. 8 fat frogs kicked furiously against each other. "Fried or barbecued, your choice." Hunter shook his head. "One more frog and I'll start catching flies with my tongue. Thanks anyway." "See you tomorrow," John Eagle waved. "Right. Only let's meet here first. Save us both some time." John Eagle laughed as he sped away. Adams paddled the canoe through the dark swamp water as silently as if he'd once done in Vietnam. Of course, now he wore a linen suit and fancy silk tie, but he didn't mind. Even in this heat, to him, it was just another kind of uniform, another kind of war. The enemy was the same. Under his left arm, his Beretta 92 SB hugged his ribs. That hadn't changed either. The bright Florida moon made navigation easy. Occasionally you hear a slurping sound as a fat alligator slid down a muddy embankment into the water to investigate. One alligator swam too close to the canoe, and Adams bonked it on the head with his paddle. It hissed at him, turned, and swam away. "Here, Mama," Adams said, and kept paddling. Up ahead, through the sawgrass, the palms and cypresses and the soft palmettos, he spotted Matt Hunter's house. The evening fog swirled around the stilted platform, making the house look as if it was hovering above the clouds, like some castle inhabited by the Norse gods. Adams grimaced. Hunter was no god, no saint, not even an agent anymore. That made him fair game. A mosquito landed on Adams' wrist. Adams stopped paddling and watched the spidery insect drink his blood, its legs bowing slightly with each slurp. He reached down and brushed it away. He paddled up to Hunter's deck. There was no lights on in the house, but Hunter's airboat was tied up. Adams climbed out of the canoe without making a sound. He unsnapped the safety strap from his holster and pulled out the Beretta. Slowly, soundlessly, he walked around the porch, peeking into the dark windows. The overhanging trees shaded the house from the moon, so he couldn't see anything inside, just darkness. He clamped his hand on the door handle. There was no lock. Gently he nudged the door inward. A board creaked above him. He spun around, the Beretta in front of him, but Hunter was already in motion, swinging down from the roof, feet thumping Adams in the chest, knocking him backwards into the house. The Beretta flew against the wall as Adams sprawled onto his back. For a fraction of a second, Adams saw Hunter framed in the doorway. The night fog aglow with dim fluorescence from the moon as it curled around him. He was faceless in the dark, faceless, compassionless, a trained assassin. For the first time in years, Adams felt fear. But Hunter did not move toward Adams. He remained in the doorway. "The answer is no." Adams sat up. "You haven't heard the offer." Hunter walked over to Adams' Beretta, picked it up, examined it. "Still carrying this?" "You gave it to me." Hunter tossed the gun to Adams. "Sentiment could get you killed." Adams slipped the Beretta back into his holster. "I couldn't be sure you were still alive. They might have already gotten you." "Who?" "Got a beer?" Hunter stared at Adams a moment, then nodded. "There's a lamp over there. Got a match?" "I'm an agent, Hunter, not a Boy Scout." "Here." Hunter allowed a Bic lighter at Adams, then disappeared into the kitchen. Adams felt his way blindly to the kerosene lamp, finally lighting it. He held the lamp up and looked around the room. "Jesus," he whistled. There was only one room, the kitchen separated by a brightly colored Indian blanket hanging from the ceiling to the floor. The rest of the room was rustic but comfortable. Wood-burning stove, overstuffed couch and chair, guitar on the wall, and lots of books piled around, some open and marked with a wooden match or a feather. One of Adam's driving obsessions back when he worked with Hunter was finding out the man's true identity. Hunter had come from the service, where his real records had been filed, top secret by some general. No one knew Hunter's real name or where he came from. Adams had been compiling a private file on him for years, writing down leads, trying to find out more. Completely unofficial, like a hobby, but more than that, too. Hunter reappeared carrying a can of beer and a glass of apple juice. He handed the beer to Adams. It was an obscure Chinese beer that Adams had developed a fondness for on one of their assignments. You couldn't get it in the United States. "You hate this brand," Adams said. "I've been saving it for you. I knew you'd show up again sooner or later." Adams sat on the couch. "Nice place. Looks like a commune or something, from the 60s. "Don't knock communes. They can be a lot of fun." Adams raised an eyebrow. "You lived in a commune?" Hunter smiled. Adams filed the information away. The FBI had done a lot of intelligence gathering on communes. Maybe when he got back, he could go through the files, dig something up. "Anyway, it's nice here. Quiet. Still play guitar, huh?" "Now and then." "No paintings, though. Just blankets." "Just blankets." "You like Indian blankets, huh?" "I like the bright-colored stripes. They did that in imitation of the brocaded materials worn by the Spanish." Adams wondered if Hunter was toying with him now. Hunter knew about Adams' file. Hell, Adams had told him about it. "Listen, Matt, you know I wouldn't have come here if I didn't think it was important. It's always important. We're serious about this one. You people are always serious. Please don't give me that 'you people' shit, Hunter," Adams said angrily. "You were one of the best for a long time." Hunter drained his apple juice and smiled. "Still am the best, kid, but I'm no longer one of you. I'm an entrepreneur now. Got my own business." "Catching goddamn alligators? That's your hotshot business?" "Hey, don't put down alligators. They're not only the last living link with dinosaurs, but the nearest living relatives of the birds. It has something to do with the evolution of their forelegs." Adams felt a headache coming on, the one he always got when dealing with Hunter. He called them Hunter migraines. "Where do you pick that stuff up?" Hunter shrugged. "Here and there." "Yeah, well, let's get down to here and now. I'm not just talking about an assignment for old time's sake. I'm talking about saving your own worthless life, too." He took a deep breath. "We think Rostov's in the country." Hunter stared directly into Adams' eyes. The flickering light from the kerosene lamp washed out the pupils, leaving only two staring discs of icy blue. Hunter stared for a door. "Where are you going?" Hunter asked, standing. "You should have let me kill him when I had the chance." "We were under orders, damn it. We need him to trade it for one of our own, you know that." Hunter marched on the dock and climbed into his airboat. Adams ran after him. "Come on, Matt. You know if Rostov is here, it means something big. He's the baddest fucking terrorist in the world." Hunter stared at the airboat. "He's your gut problem now." He revved the motor and banked the boat sharply, sending a spray of water back over Adams' linen suit and fancy silk tie.